The icy bridge outside Briar Hollow didn't break me, but the silence that followed nearly did. When I woke up in the trauma ward, battered and drifting, I learned that the hospital had called my parents first. They didn't ask if I was alive. They didn't ask about my newborn daughter, who had been strapped in the back seat. They simply told the nurse that the baby wasn't their responsibility and hung up. That refusal cost them everything. The coffee in my mug had gone cold 3 hours ago, but I kept lifting it to my lips anyway, a mechanical gesture to convince myself I was awake. At 33 years old, I thought I had understood what exhaustion felt like. I had pulled all-nighters in college and worked double shifts during my mid-20s when I was trying to prove to my parents that I did not need their money. But the exhaustion of new motherhood was a different species entirely. It was heavy and damp, like wearing a coat made of lead while trying to navigate a fog that never lifted. Briar Hollow was not a kind place to be tired. It was one of those manicured suburban towns where the lawns were measured in millimeters and the gossip traveled faster than the speed of light. If you looked disheveled at the grocery store, 3 people would text your mother before you had even scanned your milk. And my mother, Diane Nelson, lived for those texts. She collected them like evidence. I looked down at Ava, who was finally asleep in her rocker. She was 6 weeks old, a tiny, perfect bundle of instinct and need. Her chest rose and fell in a rhythm that was the only thing anchoring me to the earth. I smoothed a stray blanket corner, my fingers trembling slightly. The house was quiet, too quiet. My husband, Ryan, had left for the site at 5 in the morning. He was a project manager for a commercial construction firm, and they were behind schedule on a mid-rise downtown. He had kissed my forehead before he left, smelling like soap and sawdust, and whispered that I was doing a great job. I believed him in the moment, but the belief faded as soon as the door clicked shut. Ryan was supportive, but he was stretched so thin I could see the light shining through him. He took the night feedings when he could. But deadlines were deadlines, and we needed the money. We needed the money because we were doing this alone. My relationship with my parents, Mark and Diane, had always been a series of negotiations that I was destined to lose. They were people who viewed children not as individuals, but as extensions of their own personal brands. When I was younger, I was the chaotic element they could not control. I changed majors. I dated men they considered unsuitable. I refused to let them buy me an apartment because I knew the keys would come with unannounced inspections. They called my adulthood messy. I called it mine. When I told them I was marrying Ryan, a man who worked with his hands and did not come from a family found in the social register, the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. When I told them I was pregnant, the silence lasted for a full minute. They had not visited since Ava was born, not once. They sent a gift basket that looked like it had been ordered by a personal assistant. Expensive, tasteless, and impersonal. A silver rattle. A cashmere blanket in a shade of beige that looked like it would stain if a baby even looked at it. No card. Just a tag that said, "From the Nelsons." I checked the clock on the microwave. 9 in the morning. I had a follow-up appointment at St. Juniper Medical Center at 10:30. It was just a routine check for Ava. A weight check and a few standard questions. But it felt like a summit attempt on Everest. Getting out of the house with a newborn felt like a military operation. I needed to prove I could do this. I needed to prove that their absence did not matter. The wind rattled the kitchen window. A sharp, angry sound. The weather forecast had called for a light dusting of snow, but the sky outside was the color of a bruised plum, heavy and low. Winter in this part of the state was unpredictable. It could be sunny and 40 degrees one minute and a whiteout the next. I packed the diaper bag with the precision of a survivalist. Diapers, wipes, change of clothes for Ava, change of shirt for me, just in case. Formula, bottles, my own water bottle. I double-checked everything. I could not afford to forget anything. If I forgot something, it would be proof that I was failing. Proof that Mark and Diane were right to keep their distance, waiting for the inevitable collapse. I loaded Ava into her car seat. She stirred but didn't wake. Letting out a soft sigh that squeezed my heart, I carried her out to the SUV. the cold air slapping my cheeks awake. The driveway was dusted with white, but the roads looked clear enough. I strapped her in, tightening the harness until I was sure she was secure. I checked it twice, then a third time. I climbed into the driver's seat and gripped the wheel. My knuckles were white. "You are fine," I told myself. "You are a mother. You are capable. You are driving 10 miles to a doctor's appointment. This is what people do." I backed out of the driveway and headed toward town. The first few miles were uneventful. The radio played a low hum of soft rock, something inoffensive to keep my nerves settled. Briar Hollow gave way to the winding roads that led toward St. Juniper. The trees here were old and looming, their bare branches scratching at the gray sky. Then the snow started. It wasn't a gentle drift. It was a sudden, aggressive squall, the kind that seems to drop out of the sky all at once. The wind picked up, swirling the flakes into blinding sheets. I turned on my wipers, but they struggled to keep up. The road, which had been black asphalt a moment ago, began to glaze over. My heart hammered against my ribs. I slowed down. 30 miles an hour, 25. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Ava was still sleeping, her head lolling slightly to the side. Safe. She was safe. I reached the bridge that crossed the Iron River. It was an old structure, 2 lanes, prone to freezing before the rest of the road. I knew this. I took my foot off the gas, letting the car coast. I saw the headlights before I saw the car. A sedan coming from the opposite direction lost traction. I saw the back end of the vehicle kick out, a slow-motion slide that looked almost graceful until it wasn't. The driver overcorrected. The car snapped back, crossing the center line. It was heading straight for me. There was no time to think about life flashing before my eyes. There was only physics. I couldn't brake. I would slide. I couldn't accelerate. I would hit him harder. I steered toward the guardrail, trying to make myself small, trying to give him room to miss me. He didn't miss me. His bumper clipped my rear quarter panel. It wasn't a head-on collision, but on the ice, it was enough. The SUV spun. The world turned into a blur of gray sky, black water, and white snow. I felt the sickening lurch of gravity losing its hold. We slammed into the concrete barrier on the passenger side. Metal shrieked, glass shattered. The airbag deployed with a violence that punched the air out of my lungs and snapped my head back. Then, silence. The silence was heavier than the snow. It pressed in on my ears, ringing and absolute. My first thought was not pain. It was a name. Ava. I tried to turn my head, but my neck screamed in protest. A wave of nausea rolled over me. The world was tilting. My vision was swimming with black spots. "Ava," I whispered. My voice sounded wrecked, like I had been screaming for hours. From the back seat, a sound, a thin, high-pitched wail. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. She was crying. She was alive. "I'm coming," I mumbled, my hands fumbling with the seatbelt release. My fingers felt like sausages, numb and unresponsive. "Mommy's coming." I couldn't get the belt open. My left leg was pinned under the dashboard, throbbing with a hot, rhythmic agony that was starting to drown out everything else. I looked down. My jeans were dark, blood. The driver's side door was wrenched open. Cold air rushed in, biting and clean. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" A face appeared, a woman in a thick coat, eyes wide with panic. The other driver? A witness? I didn't know. "My baby," I choked out. "Get my baby." "Help is coming," the woman said. She looked terrified. "The ambulance is almost here. Don't move." "The baby," I insisted, grabbing her sleeve. "Is she okay?" The woman looked into the back seat. "She's crying. She looks okay. The car seat held. She's okay." The adrenaline that had kept me conscious began to drain away, leaving a cold void in its place. The pain in my leg flared up, white-hot and blinding. I slumped back against the seat. Sirens. I heard sirens. The next 20 minutes were a fragmented nightmare. I remember the paramedics, their voices calm and authoritative. I remember the sound of the jaws of life, a grinding. metallic gnawing that vibrated through my bones. I remember screaming when they moved my leg. "We have the baby," a voice said, close to my ear. "She is stable. We are taking her in the first ambulance. You're going right behind her." "Ryan," I managed to say. "Call Ryan." "We will," the voice promised. "What is his number?" I rattled off the digits, forcing my brain to focus through the fog. Tell him Ava is safe. We will tell him." They loaded me onto the stretcher. The sky above was still gray, indifferent to the wreckage below. Snowflakes landed on my eyelashes and melted. I felt a tear slide down my temple, hot against the cold skin. The ride to St. Juniper was a blur of lights and bumps. I drifted in and out. One moment I was in the ambulance, staring at the ceiling. The next I was being wheeled under bright fluorescent lights. People were cutting my clothes off. Needles were pricking my arms. "Husband isn't answering," someone said. It sounded far away. "Try the work number," I whispered. But I don't think anyone heard me. I was floating. They had given me something for the pain. It made the room soft around the edges. I felt detached, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. "We need consent for the surgery on the leg," a doctor was saying. "And we need someone for the infant. Who is the next of kin?" "Husband's phone is dead or out of range. We tried 3 times. Left voicemails." "Who else is on the list?" "Parents, Mark and Diane Nelson. Emergency contacts. Call them, now." I wanted to protest. I wanted to say no. "Don't call them. They won't care. They'll just be annoyed." But my tongue felt too heavy. I lay there, staring at a water stain on the ceiling tile, listening to the charge nurse make the call from the desk just outside the trauma bay curtain. The curtain was thin. I could hear everything. "Hello, Mr. Nelson? This is Sarah from St. Juniper Emergency Department." Pause. "Yes, I am calling about your daughter, Leah Nelson. She has been in a car accident." Pause. My heart beat a slow, sluggish rhythm. "Ask if I'm okay." I thought, please, just ask. "She is alive, sir. She has sustained significant injuries. We are prepping her for surgery, but I'm also calling because her newborn daughter was in the car." I held my breath. "Yes, the baby is physically stable, but we need a guardian present to take custody while Leah is in surgery and the husband is unreachable." The silence on the other end must have been long. Sarah's voice changed. It lost its professional sheen and took on a hard, confused edge. "Sir, I don't think you understand. Leah is incapacitated. Her husband is not answering. You are the grandparents. We need you to come to the hospital." I closed my eyes. I could imagine Mark standing in his pristine kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, looking at Diane. I could imagine the calculation in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. Her tone was rising. "Sir, it is an emergency." Another pause. "Not your responsibility?" Sarah repeated the words slowly, as if she were tasting something rotten. "Mr. Nelson, this is your grandchild. We cannot keep her in the ER indefinitely." I felt a tear leak out of my eye. It wasn't pain. It was shame. Hot, burning shame. "You are refusing to come?" Sarah asked. Her voice was icy now. "You are telling me that you will not come for your daughter or your granddaughter?" She listened for a moment longer. Then she pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at it. I couldn't see her, but I could feel the shock radiating off her. "He hung up," she said to someone nearby. "He said the baby isn't theirs to deal with. He said if the husband can't be reached, that's not his problem." "You're joking," another nurse said. "He said he isn't liable," Sarah said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Who says that? Who asks about liability when their daughter is in surgery?" I let out a sob. It was a small, broken sound. "She heard," the second nurse whispered. Sarah appeared through the curtain. Her face was flushed, her eyes sympathetic. She touched my shoulder. "Leah? Did you hear that?" I nodded. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I would scream until my throat bled. "I am so sorry," she said fiercely. "I am so sorry. We are going to figure this out. We are not letting that baby go anywhere unsafe. Do you hear me?" "Ryan," I rasped. "We're keeping trying, Ryan. Is there anyone else? Anyone at all? Friends? Neighbors?" I tried to think. My brain was a swamp. Who else? We had friends. But they were working. Neighbors? We kept to ourselves. Then, a face floated up from the depths of my memory. A face that was weathered and stern, with eyes that saw everything. My grandfather. My mother's father. The man who had quietly slipped me checks for college textbooks when my parents cut me off. The man who lived alone in a small house in Willowcrest and never played the games my parents played. "Walter?" I whispered. "Walter Hargrove." "Grandfather?" Sarah asked. Pen poised over her clipboard. "Yes." "Do you know the number?" I recited it. It was the landline he had had for 40 years. He didn't believe in cell phones. He said if you couldn't say it on a landline, it wasn't worth saying. "Okay," Sarah said. "We're calling him. Just hold on. Leah, just hold on." I drifted again. The pain in my leg was a dull roar now. Thanks to the drugs, time became elastic. It stretched and snapped back. I didn't know if 5 minutes had passed or 5 hours. I was aware of movement around me. Nurses checking vitals. The beep of monitors. The distant sound of a baby crying. Was that Ava? Or just a phantom sound in my head? Then, a voice cut through the noise. It wasn't loud, but it had a gravity that made the air in the room change. "I am looking for Leah Nelson, and I am looking for my great-granddaughter. Walter." "Sir, you can't be back here yet," a security guard said. "I am her grandfather," Walter said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. I was called. "I am here. Now, point me to the child." I forced my eyes open. Through the gap in the curtains, I saw him. Walter Hargrove was 78 years old, but he stood like a man made of ironwood. He was wearing his heavy canvas work coat and a flannel shirt buttoned to the top. He held his hat in his hands. His face was grim, his jaw set in a line that could grind rocks into dust. Sarah hurried over to him. "Mr. Hargrove? Thank God." "Where is she?" Walter asked. "Leah is in Bay 4. She's going up to surgery in 10 minutes. The baby is in the nursery." "Is the baby safe?" "Yes, she's fine. Hungry, but fine." "And Leah?" "She's stable, but she's hurt. Broken femur, concussion, internal bruising." Walter closed his eyes for a second. He took a deep breath through his nose, and when he opened his eyes again, they were terrifyingly clear. "And her parents?" Walter asked. "My daughter?" Sarah hesitated. She looked at the floor, then back at Walter. "They declined to come." Walter didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded. A slow, dark movement. "Declined," he repeated. It wasn't a question. "They said it wasn't their responsibility." Walter's knuckles turned white where he gripped his hat. "I see." He walked past Sarah. Straight to my curtain. He pulled it back. "Grandpa," I whispered. He looked down at me. His face softened, the lines around his eyes deepening. He reached out and took my hand. His hand was rough, callous against my skin. It felt like safety. "I'm here. Lee," he said, using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in years. "I'm here." "Ava," I said. "Don't let them take her." "Nobody is taking her," Walter said. His voice was a low rumble. "I'm going to go get her right now. She's coming home with me. I've got the car seat base in the truck. I bought one when she was born, just in case." I wanted to cry again. He had bought a car seat base, just in case. While my parents bought a cashmere blanket for a photo op. "Ryan?" I asked. "I'll find him," Walter said. "If I have to drive to every job site in the county, I'll find him. But first, I'm securing the baby." "They wouldn't come," I said. The words tasted like bile. "Mom and Dad, they wouldn't come." Walter squeezed my hand. Hard. I know, and they are going to have to live with that. But right now, you focus on fixing that leg. You hear me? You heal. I have the watch. You have the watch, I repeated. The old military phrase he used to say when he was tucking me in as a kid. I have the watch, he affirmed. Ava is safe. You are safe. Close your eyes. I closed my eyes. The last thing I saw was Walter turning away, his shoulders squared, walking toward the nursery with the determination of a general going to war. I finally let the darkness take me. When I woke up, the light was different, artificial, dim, nighttime. My mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. My leg was encased in something heavy. Ryan? I croaked. A hand touched my cheek. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Ryan. He looked like he had been dragged behind a truck. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair standing up in wild tufts. He was still wearing his work vest, covered in drywall dust. Ava? I asked immediately. She's with Walter, Ryan said quickly. She's at Walter's house. I just came from there. She's fed. She's clean. She's sleeping in the portable crib he set up in the living room. She is 100% okay. I exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. You saw her? I held her for an hour, Ryan said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry. Leah, my phone died. The charger in the truck broke. I didn't know until the site foreman came running up to me on the 3rd floor and told me the police called the main office. It's okay, I whispered. You're here. I should have been there, he said, burying his face in my hand. I should have been driving. It was an accident. Ice. Ryan lifted his head. His expression hardened. Walter told me what happened, with your parents. The cold feeling returned to my chest. Yeah. The nurse told me too, Ryan said. She showed me the notes on the chart. Refusal to intervene, stated lack of responsibility. That's what they wrote down. Leah, it's in your permanent medical record. They didn't want the hassle, I said. They were afraid of liability. Ryan looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall. Walter is furious. I've never seen him like this. He's calm, but it's scary calm. He took Ava? He didn't give the hospital a choice. He walked in there, showed his ID, signed the temporary guardianship papers, and told them that if Mark or Diane showed up, they were to be removed from the premises. Good, I said. The word felt small but solid. He's taking care of everything, Ryan said. He told me to stay here with you tonight. He said he has the night shift with Ava. He made me a sandwich before I left, ham and cheese. Ryan laughed, a short, wet sound. He's making sandwiches while your parents are probably worrying about whether this will make the police blotter in the local paper. It probably will, I said. Let it, Ryan said fiercely. Let everyone know. No, I said. Not yet. I don't have the energy. Okay, Ryan soothed. Okay, no energy required. Just sleep. Ryan? Yeah? We are never asking them for anything again. Never. Ryan kissed my knuckles. I know. I promise. Never again. I drifted back toward sleep. But this time, the terror was gone. My parents had abandoned us on a bridge in the snow. They had looked at the prospect of their daughter and granddaughter needing help, and they had turned away. It hurt. God, it hurt. It felt like a hollow space in the center of my chest where my history used to be. But as I slipped under, I thought of Walter. I thought of his rough hands and his canvas coat. I thought of him walking into the nursery and claiming my daughter when no one else would. My parents had refused us, but we hadn't been lost. We had been found, and tomorrow, I had a feeling, things were going to be very different. Walter Hargrove had the watch, and God help anyone who tried to mess with his family now. The recovery room was a place where time went to die. I floated in a gray chemical haze for what felt like days, though the clock on the wall insisted only hours had passed. The surgery to repair my femur had been successful, or so the surgeons told me in voices that sounded like they were speaking from the bottom of a well. They used words like titanium rod and screws and extensive soft tissue damage. But all I could focus on was the throbbing, rhythmic heat in my left leg. It felt less like a limb and more like a cage of angry wasps attached to my hip. When the fog finally lifted enough for me to hold a thought for more than 10 seconds, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Ryan was asleep in the uncomfortable recliner in the corner, his mouth slightly open, his hand still clutching his phone. The room was dark, lit only by the blinking lights of the monitors. And then the memory hit me. The bridge, the spin, the silence, the call. Not our responsibility. The words echoed in my head, louder than the heart monitor. I tried to push them away. I tried to do what I had done for 33 years, make excuses for them. Maybe the connection was bad. Maybe they didn't understand the severity. Maybe they thought it was a scam call. People got scam calls all the time, right? I let out a dry, rusty laugh. It scraped my throat. Ryan stirred. He sat up instantly, his eyes wide and panicked. "Leah, you okay? Do you need the nurse?" I shook my head, wincing as the movement triggered a headache behind my eyes. "I am okay. Just thirsty." Ryan was at my side in a second, holding a cup of ice chips with a straw to my lips. The cold was shocking and wonderful. I drank greedily. "Slow down," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair off my forehead. "You will get sick." I swallowed and looked at him. He looked older than he had yesterday. There were deep lines bracketed around his mouth. "Where is she?" I asked. I knew the answer, but I needed to hear it again. "She is with Walter," Ryan said. His voice was steady. "A rock in the surf. I was just there 3 hours ago. She took 4 ounces of formula. She is sleeping in the living room. Walter moved his armchair right next to the crib so he can watch her while he reads. She is safe. Leah. 100% safe." I closed my eyes. Thank God. "And Mom and Dad?" I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Did they call back?" Ryan went still. He set the cup of ice chips down on the tray table with a little too much force. "No," he said. "They didn't call back." I tried to force a smile. I tried to summon the old Leah, the one who could shrug off her parents' coldness as just their way. "Well, you know them," I said, my voice sounding thin and pathetic in the quiet room. "They probably freaked out. Dad hates hospitals. He probably thought if he came down here he would catch something. They are just dramatic." Ryan didn't smile back. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle my leg. He took my hand in both of his. "Leah, stop." "Stop what?" "Stop doing the work for them," he said. His voice was low, but there was a hardness in it I wasn't used to. I talked to the charge nurse. I saw the log. "Leah, the hospital has a protocol. They document everything for liability reasons." Liability. That word again. The nurse wrote down exactly what your father said. Ryan continued. "He didn't ask if you were hurt. He didn't ask if the baby was alive. He asked if coming to the hospital would make him the guarantor for the bill. And when they told him no, but they needed a guardian for Ava, he said, and I am quoting here, 'That is not my problem to solve.'" The air left the room. I looked at Ryan, searching for a softening, a hint that he was exaggerating. But Ryan didn't lie. He was a builder. He dealt in measurements and concrete. "He said that?" I whispered. "He said that." Ryan confirmed. I turned my head away, staring at the sterile white curtain. I wanted to laugh it off again. I wanted to say, "Oh, that is just Mark being Mark," but the laugh wouldn't come. Instead, a sob welled up in my chest, hot and violent. I clamped my hand over my mouth, trying to hold it in. I didn't want to cry over them. I had spent my 20s crying over them, over missed graduations, over snide comments about my weight, over the way they looked at Ryan like he was the help. I was a mother now. I was supposed to be done with this. But the tears came anyway. They leaked out of the corners of my eyes and ran into my ears. It wasn't just sadness. It was humiliation. It was the crushing realization that if I had died on that bridge, my daughter would have been left in a police station waiting room because my parents didn't want to be inconvenienced. Ryan didn't try to stop me. He just held my hand, his grip tight, letting me break apart so he could help me put the pieces back together. The next morning brought sunlight and Walter. He walked into the room at 8 o'clock sharp, carrying a thermos of coffee and a folder of paperwork. He looked tired. His eyes were shadowed, but he was freshly shaved and wearing a clean button-down shirt. "Grandpa," I said. My voice was raspy. He set the things down and kissed my forehead. His lips were cool and dry. "Morning, Lily. You look like you went 12 rounds with a prizefighter. I feel like the prizefighter used a tire iron," I said. Walter pulled up a chair. Ryan had gone to the cafeteria to get breakfast, so it was just the two of us. Walter didn't waste time with small talk. That wasn't his way. "Ava is doing fine," he said. "She slept 4 hours straight. She likes the ceiling fan in my living room, stares at it like it is the secrets of the universe." I smiled. A genuine one this time. "Thank you. I don't know what we would have done without you." "You would have managed," Walter said firmly, "because you are strong. But you didn't have to manage alone. That is the difference." He opened the folder on his lap. "We need to handle some business." "Leah, business?" "Your parents," he said. My stomach tightened. "What about them?" Walter took out a pair of reading glasses and perched them on his nose. "I spoke to a few people this morning. Briar Hollow is a small town. The ladies at the diner talk. The postman talks. It seems Mark and Diane have been busy." "Doing what?" "Explaining why they weren't here," Walter said. He didn't look up from the papers. "They are telling people that they were advised to stay away. That you were having a mental health episode. That the accident was complicated." I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my hip. "What?" "They are implying you were unstable," Walter said calmly. "That you were driving erratically. That they are giving you space to heal because you are fragile right now. They posted something on Facebook this morning. A picture of an unlit candle. The caption says, 'Praying for our daughter as she battles her demons. Privacy, please.'" "Battles her demons?" I practically shouted. "I was hit by a car on ice." "I know," Walter said. "Ryan knows. The police report knows. But the truth is boring. Leah, and your parents don't do boring. They do victims. And right now, they are painting themselves as the heartbroken parents of a troubled daughter." "Why?" I asked. "Why would they do that?" "Because if you are troubled, then their refusal to come to the hospital looks like tough love instead of abandonment," Walter said. He looked at me over the rims of his glasses. "It is a narrative. Leah, they are rewriting the story before you even wake up to tell it." I sank back into the pillows, feeling sick. They were using my accident, my almost death, to get sympathy likes on social media. Walter tapped the folder. "Which is why we are going to lock this down. Now." He pulled out a document. "I called an old friend of mine." Walter said, or rather, the son of an old friend, David Ketter. "He is a partner at Ketter & Morrow. He drafted this up this morning. What is it?" "It is a temporary power of attorney and a delegation of parental authority," Walter explained. "It states that if you are incapacitated, Ryan is the sole decision-maker, and if Ryan is unavailable, if he is at work, or if his phone dies again, I am the secondary. It explicitly excludes Mark and Diane Nelson from making any medical or legal decisions for you or Ava." I stared at the paper. It felt drastic. It felt like a declaration of war. "Do we really need this?" I asked. "They are my parents. Grandpa. They wouldn't actually hurt Ava." Walter didn't blink. "They left her in a trauma bay. Leah, they refused to sign for her care. That is not hurting her with a hand, but it is hurting her with neglect, and I will not let them have a second chance to do it. But the legal stuff." I trailed off. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest. It felt wrong to sign papers against my own mother and father. It felt like I was the one breaking the family, not them. Ryan walked in then, carrying a tray of eggs and toast. He saw the papers and stopped. "Is that it?" Ryan asked. Walter nodded. "Leah is hesitating," Walter said. Ryan set the food down and looked at me. His eyes were clear. Sign it. Leah, Ryan, sign it. He repeated. This isn't about punishment. This is about clarity. If something happens, if you have a complication, if I get stuck at a site, do you want the hospital calling them again? Do you want to wonder if they will show up? I thought about the nurse's face. I thought about the words, not my responsibility. No, I whispered. Then sign it. Ryan said. It is just a boundary. Boundaries are how we love Ava. We protect her from people who can't protect her. I looked at the pen Walter was holding out. My hand was shaking as I took it. I pressed the tip to the paper. The ink was black and permanent. Leah Nelson. I signed my name. And as I lifted the pen, I didn't feel guilt. I felt a strange, cold relief. Good, Walter said. He took the paper and slid it into the folder. I will file this with the hospital legal department within the hour. It will be in your chart. Just then, there was a gentle knock on the doorframe. A woman in a navy blue suit stood there. She had a kind, tired face and a badge that said, Patient Advocacy. Mrs. Nelson, she asked. Yes. I am sorry to disturb you, the woman said. Stepping inside, I am the hospital administrator on call. I just wanted to come by and clarify a billing question that came up regarding your admission. Ryan stepped forward. We have insurance. It is on file. Yes, I see that. The administrator said, but there was a note in the intake file about a request from a Mr. Mark Nelson regarding liability waivers. I froze. He called back? Ryan asked, his voice dangerous. The administrator looked down at her tablet. He called the billing department at 6 this morning. He wanted to confirm that since he did not admit you, his insurance was not being billed and he was not listed as a guarantor. He was very specific about ensuring his name was not attached to the financial responsibility of the stay. The room went silent. Walter let out a slow breath through his nose. I see, Walter said. I looked at the administrator. He called at 6 in the morning? Yes, ma'am. Did he ask how I was? I asked. The administrator hesitated. She was a bad liar. He was very focused on the billing aspect. Mrs. Nelson, thank you. I said. My voice was eerily calm. You can assure him that he is not liable. We pay our own bills. I will make a note, she said. She looked relieved to be leaving. When she was gone, I looked at Walter. It is transactional, I said. It isn't even emotional for them. It is just a transaction. I am a liability. Walter nodded slowly. Yes, and that is why you cannot afford to treat them like parents. You have to treat them like business partners who are trying to cheat you. I felt something inside me harden. It was a piece of my heart that had always been soft for them, always waiting for approval. It calcified, turning into bone. They showed up at 2 in the afternoon. I knew they were coming before I saw them because my aunt, my mother's sister, had texted me an hour earlier. So glad Mark and Diane are finally able to get to you. They were frantic with worry. Frantic. I was sitting up in bed, Ryan helping me with some gentle range of motion exercises for my ankle. When the smell of Chanel No. 5 drifted into the room, it was heavy, floral, and expensive. It smelled like my childhood, like parties I had to be quiet at, like hugs that I wasn't allowed to wrinkle. Diane Nelson swept into the room like she was entering a stage. She was wearing a camel-colored wool coat that probably cost more than my first car, and her hair was perfectly blown out. She was holding a massive bouquet of lilies. Mark was 2 steps behind her, wearing a suit jacket and jeans, his casual, wealthy weekend look. He held a teddy bear that was so large it looked ridiculous. Leah! Diane cried out. She rushed to the bedside, her face crumpling into a mask of anguish. She reached for my hand, the one with the IV line, and squeezed it. Oh, my poor baby. Look at you. We have been sick with worry. Absolutely sick. I watched her performance with a detachment that surprised me. I saw the way she positioned herself so that anyone walking by in the hallway would see the devoted mother. I saw the way she didn't actually look at my eyes, but at the bandages on my leg, assessing the damage. Mark stood at the foot of the bed. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Hell of a wreck. Leah, he said. He sounded almost impressed. Saw the photos on the news. You are lucky to be alive. I pulled my hand out of my mother's grip. Hello, Mom. Hello, Dad. Why didn't you call us sooner? Diane asked, wiping a non-existent tear from her cheek. We heard from Aunt Carol that you were out of surgery. We rushed right over. You didn't hear from the hospital? I asked. Diane waved her hand dismissively. Oh, some nurse called last night, but it was all chaos. We couldn't understand what she was saying. Something about a car seat? We didn't know it was this bad. Lies. Smooth, practiced lies. Where is the baby? Mark asked, looking around the room. Where is my granddaughter? He said my granddaughter with the same tone he used when he said my boat or my golf clubs. Possession. She is safe. Ryan said. He was standing on the other side of the bed, his arms crossed. He looked like a guard dog ready to snap a leash. Well, bring her here, Diane said, looking at Ryan as if he were a slow waiter. We brought her a bear, and I want to see her. I need to hold her. It will make me feel so much better. It will make me feel better. Not, is she okay? Not, how is she eating? She isn't here. I said, what do you mean she isn't here? Mark frowned. This is a hospital. Bring her in. She is not at the hospital. I said, she is with her guardian. Diane froze. Her smile faltered. Guardian? Leah, don't be silly. We are here now. We can take her. In fact, we have the car downstairs. We can take her home with us tonight so you can rest. The audacity took my breath away. They wanted to take her. After refusing her, after asking about liability, they wanted to parade her around Briar Hollow as the grandmother of the year. No, I said. Diane laughed. A brittle, high-pitched sound. Leah, darling, you are on pain medication. You aren't thinking clearly. You can't take care of a newborn with a broken leg. I can, Ryan said. Diane didn't even look at him. Ryan has to work. Don't you? Ryan, you can't afford to take off weeks. We have the space. We have the nanny on call. It just makes sense. She reached for her phone. I'll just call the nurse station and tell them we are taking charge of the discharge for the baby. Don't touch the phone. Mom, I said. My voice was not loud, but it was sharp. Diane stopped, her hand hovering over her purse. I beg your pardon? She isn't here. I repeated, she is with Grandpa. Walter? Diane's face twisted. Why on earth would she be with Dad? He is an old man. He lives in that cabin. He lives in a house, I said, and she is with him because he came. Mark stepped forward, his face reddening. Now listen here. Leah, we are your parents. We have a right to see that child. You are making a scene. I am not making a scene. I said, I am stating a fact. You cannot see her. You cannot take her. This is ridiculous. Mark scoffed. He looked at Ryan. Talk some sense into her. She is hysterical. Ryan didn't move. She looks pretty calm to me. Mark huffed. I am going to find a doctor. This is absurd. I am the grandfather. I want to see the baby. He turned toward the door. Excuse me? He shouted at a nurse passing by. I need to speak to the charge nurse. I am being denied access to my grandchild. The nurse stopped. She was a tall woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. She looked at Mark, then at me, then at the computer screen on the wall mount. Name? She asked. Mark Nelson. She tapped a few keys. Her face didn't change. Mr. Nelson, I have a directive here from the legal department. You are not authorized to visit the infant. Ava Mercer, and you are only allowed in Mrs. Nelson's room at her discretion. Mark's jaw dropped. A directive? What the hell is that? It means you need to step back. Sir, or I will call security. Diane looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. Leah? You did this? You put a block on us? I looked at them. I looked at the expensive coat and the prop flowers and the giant bear. They looked like strangers. I took a breath. The pain in my leg was throbbing, but my mind was crystal clear. Why didn't you come? I asked. Diane blinked. What? When they called you. I said, when I was bleeding on the table and Ryan wasn't answering. When they told you Ava was alone. Why didn't you come? Diane flinched. Leah, we told you. We didn't know. They told you it was a car accident. I said, cutting her off. They told you there was a newborn. It was a misunderstanding, Mark shouted. He was losing his composure. His face was blotchy. We didn't want to overstep. Overstep? I laughed, and it sounded like glass breaking. You asked about liability. Dad, you asked if you would have to pay. Mark went white. Who told you that? He demanded. That is confidential. So it is true, I said. Diane grabbed Mark's arm. Leah, you are being incredibly unfair. We are here now. Doesn't that count for anything? We brought flowers. No, I said. It doesn't count. Leah, get out, I said. Diane gasped. You are kicking us out? When people know we are here? What will we tell them? Tell them whatever you want, I said, closing my eyes. You are good at stories. Tell them I am battling my demons. But get out of my room. Mark pointed a finger at me. You are going to regret this. Leah, you are going to need us. And when you do, Ryan stepped between Mark and the bed. He didn't touch him, but he stood close enough that Mark had to take a step back. She asked you to leave, Ryan said. Mark looked at Ryan, then at me. He sneered. Have it your way. Come on. Diane. She is obviously drugged out of her mind. We will come back when she is rational. They turned and marched out. I watched them go. I watched the camel coat and the suit jacket disappear into the hallway. The silence rushed back in. I looked at the lilies on the bedside table. They were beautiful. They were perfect. They had no smell. I realize now, they were hothouse flowers, bred for looks, devoid of scent. Can you put those in the trash? I asked Ryan. Ryan picked up the heavy vase. With pleasure. He dropped them into the waste bin. The crash was satisfying. I lay back against the pillows. My heart was racing. But the tears were gone. I felt lighter. I had asked the question. I had seen the truth. They hadn't come because they didn't care. And now, they only cared because people were watching. I reached for my phone on the tray table. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Walter answered on the second ring. Hargrove Residence. Grandpa? I said. I am here. Lee. They came. I said. I figured they would. I sent them away. There was a pause on the line. A warm, comfortable silence. Good, Walter said. Proud of you. Is Ava awake? She is right here. I am reading her the sports section. The local team is tanking again. Tell her mommy loves her. I will tell her. I hung up the phone. I looked at the empty space where the flowers had been. I had a broken leg. I had a long recovery ahead. I had parents who viewed me as a liability. But for the first time in my life, the space around me didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I closed my eyes and let the sleep come. This time without the nightmares. I was done begging to be chosen. I had chosen myself. The drive to Willowcrest felt like crossing a border between two warring nations. Behind us lay the sterile, fluorescent humming of St. Juniper Medical Center and the looming threat of my parents' manicured expectations. Ahead lay the winding, tree-lined streets of the neighborhood where I had spent the few truly peaceful weekends of my childhood. Walter's house was a single-story craftsman, built in the 1950s, painted a sensible slate blue with white trim. It was not a mansion. It did not have a grand foyer or a kitchen designed for a magazine spread. It smelled of wood smoke, lemon oil, and old paper. When Ryan carried me over the threshold, my left leg encased in a heavy cast, my ribs still aching with every breath, I felt something in my shoulders finally unclench. We established a routine quickly, driven by the biological metronome of a newborn. My world shrank to the guest room and the living room. I spent my days in a rented hospital bed that Walter had somehow procured and set up in the bay window, overlooking the bird feeders. Life became a series of small, quiet victories, Ava latching without fuss, the cast itching less than yesterday, Ryan making it home from work by 5:30, Walter sitting in his leather armchair, reading the Wall Street Journal aloud to Ava while she kicked her legs on a blanket. There was no chaos. There were no demands. If I fell asleep in the middle of a sentence, no one sighed loudly to let me know I was being rude. If Ava cried, hands appeared to soothe her. My hands. Ryan's hands. Walter's hands. It was the first time in my life I had been taken care of without receiving a bill for the service later. But the peace inside the house was under siege from the outside. It started with the voicemails. My phone, which I kept on silent, became a graveyard of missed calls. Leah, it is Mom. Please pick up. We are just sick with worry. People are asking, Leah, this is ridiculous. Pick up the phone. Leah, your father is very upset. You are embarrassing him. Then the tone shifted. The apologies arrived, but they were weaponized. Leah, we are sorry if you felt unsupported, but you have to understand our position. We were in shock. Please don't punish us for being human. I listened to them in the dark while nursing Ava, feeling the familiar cocktail of guilt and nausea. They were experts at this. The rapid cycle of aggression and victimhood. They threw stones and then cried when their hands got dusty. Ryan wasn't spared. I found him in the kitchen one evening, gripping his phone so hard his knuckles were white. I understand. Mark, Ryan was saying, his voice tight. No, that won't work. Because she is recovering. Because I said so. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the counter. It slid across the formica and hit the toaster. They are calling you? I asked. Ryan turned, his shoulders slumping. Every day. Your dad wants to know when the nonsense is going to end. He has a contractor buddy who wants to bid on the teardown for the old mill. And he thinks if we all have dinner, he can network. He wants to use us for networking? He wants to show that everything is normal, Ryan corrected. If everything is normal, he isn't the guy who abandoned his daughter. He is just the guy with the busy family. I looked down at my cast. I can't pretend. Ryan, not this time. Good, Ryan said. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. Don't. The paper trail began on a Tuesday. 10 days after the accident, Walter brought the mail in, stomping snow off his boots. He sorted through it at the kitchen table while I sat nearby, folding tiny onesies. Bill, junk, flyer for the pizza place, Walter muttered. He paused. He held up a thin, business-sized envelope. This one is for you. From North Pine Logistics Credit Union. I frowned. Who? North Pine. It is a credit union over in the next county. I don't have an account with them, I said. I bank with Chase. Always have. Walter didn't hand it to me immediately. He held it up to the light, his expression unreadable. Then he slid it open with his pocket knife. Grandpa, that is a federal crime, I joked weakly. I am the executor of your common sense, he retorted. He pulled out the letter, unfolded it, and read it in silence. The silence stretched too long. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to get louder. What is it? I asked. Walter placed the paper on the table and smoothed it out. It is a collections notice. Past due, 6 months. For what? A personal line of credit, $4,500, opened 2 years ago. I stared at the paper. That is impossible. I didn't open a line of credit 2 years ago. We were saving for the house. We were watching every penny. I know, Walter said. It must be a mistake. Identity theft. Walter looked at me. His eyes were gray and hard, like the winter sky. It is identity theft, Leah. But it isn't a mistake. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? Look at the address on the account, he said. Tapping the paper, I leaned forward. P.O. Box 772, Briar Hollow, NY. I don't know that box, I said. I do, Walter said softly. It is the box Mark uses for his consulting business. The one he keeps separate from the house mail so Diane doesn't see the credit card bills. The room seemed to tilt. Dad? He has your social security number. Leah, he has had it since you were born. But why? He has money. They have the house, the cars. They have the appearance of money, Walter corrected. Mark has been robbing Peter to pay Paul for 20 years. He leverages everything, and when he runs out of his own credit, he looks for fresh tracks. I felt sick. He opened a credit line in my name? To pay for what? Does it matter? Walter asked. Maybe a lease payment on the Audi, maybe a vacation, maybe just to have cash flow. Diane knows? Diane knows what she allows herself to know, Walter said. She sees the new car, and she doesn't ask where the money came from because she likes the car. She looks away. It is her specialty. I pushed the paper away as if it were contaminated. He stole from me. He stole my name. Because it was easier, Walter said. The anger in his voice was buried deep, vibrating in the floorboards. Because to him, you aren't a separate person. You are an asset, and assets are meant to be used. Ryan came home an hour later. I showed him the letter. I expected him to be shocked. I expected him to yell. Instead, he walked to his work bag, unzipped the front pocket, and pulled out a black 3-ring binder. "What is that?" I asked. "I didn't want to stress you out while you were healing," Ryan said, sitting down heavily. "But I have been keeping track. Since the wedding." He opened the binder. Inside were printouts, bank statements, screenshots of weird emails. "Remember when we got denied for that first mortgage pre-approval?" Ryan asked. "The broker said there was a ding on your report, but then it vanished a week later?" "Yeah. You said it was a glitch." "It wasn't a glitch. Someone paid off a delinquency 3 days after we applied. It was a check from a shell company Mark owns." Ryan turned the page. "And remember when you started getting those calls about the timeshare in Florida? The one you never visited?" I stared at the binder. "You knew?" "I suspected," Ryan said. "I didn't have proof, and I knew if I accused him without proof. They would gaslight us. They would say I was crazy about us. They would turn you against me. I wouldn't have turned against you." "Leah," Ryan said gently, 2 years ago, you might have. You wanted their approval so badly." He was right. The truth stung more than the incision on my leg. 2 years ago, if Ryan had called my father a thief, I would have defended Mark. I would have said it was a misunderstanding. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be sorry," Ryan said. "Just be done." The next day, Walter arranged a meeting with the attorney, David Ketter. He came to the house because I couldn't navigate the stairs to his office. David was a sharp-featured man in his 40s who spoke with clinical precision. He sat at Walter's dining table, reviewing the North Pine letter and Ryan's binder. "You have 2 choices," David said, clasping his hands. "Option A, you pay the debt, you close the account, you assume the loss to keep the peace." "And option B?" I asked. "Option B, you file a police report for identity theft. We send the report to the credit union. The debt is removed from your record because it was fraudulent. The credit union then opens an investigation to find the perpetrator. They will find Mark," I said. "They will," David confirmed. "And they will prosecute. Bank fraud is not a civil dispute. It is a felony." The room went quiet. I looked at the snow falling outside the window. A felony. My father in handcuffs. My mother weeping in a courtroom. The scandal in Briar Hollow would be nuclear. "I can't send him to jail," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't be the one who does that." "You aren't sending him to jail," Walter said from his armchair. "He sent himself to jail when he signed your name." "But I have to pull the trigger," I said. "Grandpa, he is my dad. He is a man who refused your baby at a hospital," Ryan reminded me. "And he is a man who is tanking your credit score to buy boat fuel." I looked at Ava, who was asleep in her bassinet in the corner. If my credit was ruined, we couldn't buy a house. We couldn't take out student loans for her one day. Mark wasn't just stealing from me. He was stealing from her. "Is there a middle ground?" I asked David. "There is," David said. "We create a trust. We lock down your assets and Ava's future, And we send a cease and desist letter regarding the accounts. We tell him we know. We give him 7 days to pay the balance in full and close the account. Or we file the police report. Leverage, Walter noted. Protection, David corrected. We use the threat of exposure to force him to clean up his mess. But Leah, you need to understand. This only works if you're willing to follow through. If he calls your bluff and doesn't pay, you have to file the report. If you don't, you are legally accepting the debt. I looked at Ryan. He nodded. I looked at Walter. He was watching me, waiting. Draw it up, I said. 7 days. We didn't have to wait 7 days for the next confrontation. We only had to wait 2. I was in the living room, struggling through my physical therapy exercises, lifting my leg 5 inches, holding it, lowering it, when a car crunched up the gravel driveway. I knew the engine sound. It was the Mercedes SUV. Ryan is at work, I said, panic rising in my throat. Walter is in the garage. The doorbell didn't ring. The door simply opened. My mother didn't believe in knocking. She believed in making an entrance. Hello? Anyone home? Diane breezed in. She was carrying 3 massive shopping bags from a high-end boutique in the city. She spotted me on the sofa and stopped, arranging her face into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. There you are. Oh, look at this place. It is so quaint, very rustic. She dropped the bags on the floor. Tissue paper spilled out. Mom, I said, you didn't call. I wanted to surprise you, she exclaimed. She started pulling things out of the bags. I felt terrible about the hospital misunderstanding, so I went shopping. Look, Leah, a Burberry trench coat for Ava, for when she is a toddler, and this velvet dress. And, oh, you will die, matching cashmere sweaters for us. She held up a tiny sweater and a large one. They were beautiful. They were soft. They were bribes. I don't need sweaters, Mom, I said. I need an explanation about the North Pine account. Diane froze. Her eyes darted to the left, a tell I had never noticed until now. The what? Oh, that your father handles the finances. Leah, you know I don't understand the banking details. You understand spending the money, I said. Did you know he opened it in my name? Leah, really? She huffed, dropping the sweaters. Why are you always so dramatic? Mark was just trying to manage cash flow. He intended to pay it back. He always pays it back. He didn't ask me. Family helps family, Diane cried, her voice rising to a pitch that hurt my ears. We paid for your college. We paid for your wedding dress. And you are going to begrudge your father a little paperwork maneuvering? It is fraud. Mom, it is survival, she snapped. Then, just as quickly, she pivoted. The anger vanished, replaced by a wheedling sweetness. She looked around. Where is the baby? I want to see her in this dress. I want to take a picture for the Garden Club newsletter. They are doing a new arrivals section. No, I said. Diane blinked. What? No photos? No dress up? She is sleeping. Wake her up, Diane said. Just for a minute. The light is perfect right now. She reached for her phone. She was already opening the camera app. She wasn't here to see me. She wasn't here to see Ava. She was here to get the asset, the image of the happy grandmother, so she could go back to her lunch and show everyone that everything was fine. Mom, stop, I said. Don't be silly, she said, taking a step toward the hallway where the bedrooms were. I'll just peek in. Diane. The voice came from the kitchen doorway. Walter stood there. He was wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He looked massive. Dad, Diane said, her smile faltering. I was just bringing gifts. Take them, Walter said. Excuse me? Take the bags. Take the sweaters. Take yourself and get out of my house. Diane flushed a deep, ugly red. This is my daughter. Dad, you can't keep me from her. I am not keeping you from her, Walter said. Her boundaries are keeping you from her. She said no photos. She said no waking the baby. You didn't listen, so now you leave. Diane's phone rang in her hand. She looked at it. It is Mark, she said. holding it up like a shield. He is going to be furious. Put him on, Walter said. Diane tapped the speaker button. Mark? I am at Dad's. He is throwing me out. Put him on. Mark's voice boomed through the speaker. He sounded like he was in his car, road noise humming in the background. I can hear you. Mark, Walter said. You listen to me, old man, Mark shouted. I know what you are doing. You are poisoning her against us. You are trying to control the narrative. I am trying to protect her credit score, Walter said calmly. We found the North Pine account. Mark? There was a silence on the line, a heavy, guilty silence. That is a misunderstanding, Mark said, his voice dropping an octave. I can explain that. You can explain it to the police, Walter said. Or you can pay it off by Friday. Those are your options. You wouldn't, Mark snarled. Leah wouldn't. She doesn't have the guts. I looked at the phone. I looked at the expensive, useless clothes on the floor. I looked at my mother, who was checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, worried about her lipstick while her husband threatened her father. I have the guts, I said loud enough for the phone to pick it up. Leah? Mark sounded shocked. I saw the letter, Dad, and I saw the text messages you sent Ryan. You called me an ungrateful brat. You are, Mark exploded. After everything we gave you a life. And this is how you repay us? By hiding out in a shack with your senile grandfather and threatening to sue me? He isn't senile, I said. And it isn't a shack. It is a home, something you wouldn't know about. You are dead to me, Mark spat. If you file that report, you are dead to us. Don't expect a cent of inheritance. Don't expect us to be there when your blue-collar husband leaves you. Mark, Diane hissed, looking at me with wide eyes. Don't say that. It is the truth, Mark yelled. Walter walked over and took the phone from Diane's hand. He pressed the red button. The silence that followed was exquisite. He handed the phone back to Diane. Go, Walter said. Diane looked at me. She looked like she wanted to say something, maybe an apology, maybe an excuse. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She picked up her bags. You are making a mistake, Leah, she said softly. You need us more than you think. I really don't, I said. And that is what kills you. She turned and walked out. The door clicked shut. That evening, the house was quiet again. Ryan was home. We were eating chili that Walter had made, sitting around the kitchen table. I felt drained, like I had run a marathon, but I also felt clear. I need to do something, I said. What? Ryan asked. I need to fix the hospital records, and the daycare forms, and the emergency contact list at your work, Ryan nodded. Okay. I realized something today, I said, stirring my chili. My therapist used to say that my parents loved me, but they just didn't know how to show it. But that isn't true. Walter looked up from his bowl. What is the truth? They love with terms, I said. It is a contract. I love you as long as you make me look good. I love you as long as you don't cost me money. I love you as long as you let me control you. That isn't love, Walter said. That is ownership. Exactly, I said. And I am not property. I pulled my laptop over. I logged into the hospital patient portal. I navigated to the emergency contacts tab. There they were. Mark Nelson. Diane Nelson. I clicked edit. I highlighted their names. I hit delete in the empty fields. I typed Walter Hargrove. Then I opened a Word document. I typed a short statement. To Saint. Juniper Medical Records and Administration. Effective immediately. Mark and Diane Nelson are to be removed from all access lists regarding myself. Leah Mercer and my daughter, Ava Mercer. They are not to be given information about our medical status or location. They are not authorized to make decisions. This is due to a documented history of refusal of care and financial misconduct. It wasn't vindictive. It wasn't emotional. It was just the truth. I printed it out. I signed it. Can you drop this off at the hospital tomorrow? I asked Ryan. First thing in the morning, he promised. I closed the laptop. I looked at Walter. "Thank you," I said, "for kicking her out." "I have been wanting to do that for 30 years, Walter admitted, a small smile playing on his lips. "It was remarkably satisfying." I laughed. It felt good to laugh. The battle wasn't over. I knew Mark would retaliate, and I knew the debt issue was a ticking bomb, but the lines were drawn. They were on the outside, in the cold and the dark, and we were in here, where it was warm. I picked up Ava and held her close, smelling the milk and soap on her skin. "You will never have to earn my love," I whispered to her. "It is free. It is yours. Always." She sighed in her sleep, and that was all the confirmation I needed. February arrived in Briar Hollow with a teasing promise of a thaw that never quite committed. The snow melted into a gray, slushy paste during the day and froze into jagged ruts at night. It was ugly weather, the kind that made you want to hibernate. But for me, it was the season of movement. My cast had been replaced by a walking boot, a heavy Velcro-strapped contraption that felt like wearing a cinder block. But it was removable. That was the victory. I could take a shower standing up, provided I leaned heavily against the safety rail Walter had installed. I could navigate the hallway without the crutches, though I still used a cane that Walter had dug out of the attic, a sturdy oak stick with a brass handle that made me feel less like an invalid and more like a land baron surveying his acreage. With the physical mobility came a strange, sharp mental clarity. For the first few weeks after the accident, the pain medication and the shock had acted like a buffer. I had been wrapped in cotton wool, protected from the sharp edges of my reality. Now, the fog was lifting. I was waking up, and I was looking at my life with eyes that were no longer watering from smoke. I sat at the kitchen table, watching Walter organize his monthly bills. He was old school in his methods. A physical checkbook, a stack of envelopes, a book of stamps. There was a rhythm to it that I found soothing. Scribble, tear, lick, stamp. "You need help with those?" I asked. Ava was in my lap, chewing on a silicone teething ring with ferocious concentration. "I have been paying bills since before zip codes were invented," Walter said without looking up. "I think I can manage the electric company." He paused, his pen hovering over a check. He looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. He sighed, a long, rattling exhalation that seemed to deflate his shoulders. "Leah," he said, "there is something you need to know." The tone of his voice made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the scary tone he used with my parents. It was a sad, resigned tone. "What is it? Is it the house?" "No," Walter said. "It is about your parents. And money." "We know about the money," I said. "The North Pine account? The credit fraud?" "That is what they took from you," Walter said. "I am talking about what I gave them." He turned the checkbook register toward me. I leaned in. The handwriting was cramped but precise. I saw entries going back months. Mark, car repair. Mark, property tax. Diane, club dues. Mark, loan. The amounts were not small. $500 here, $2,000 there. "You have been paying their bills?" I asked, looking up at him. "For 20 years, Walter said. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "It started small. They were short on a mortgage payment. Then Mark needed capital for a business venture that was guaranteed to pay out. Then Diane needed a new wardrobe for some gala where Mark was going to meet investors. "But they act like they are rich," I said. "They drive luxury cars. They go to Europe. They go to Europe on credit cards, and they pay the minimums with checks I write them." Walter said, "Their status is a house of cards, Leah, and I have been the one holding the glue." I felt a wave of nausea. All those years they had looked down on me. All those years they had criticized my messy life, my choice to marry a construction manager, my refusal to climb the social ladder. They had been standing on a platform built by the very man they called a miser. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" "Because she is my daughter," Walter said simply. "And because I kept hoping that if I fixed the problem, They would finally stabilize. I thought if I took the pressure off, they would become the people they pretended to be. It was a fool's errand. It wasn't foolish, I said softly. It was love, but they used it. They consumed it, Walter corrected. And they are hungry again. He closed the checkbook with a snap. I cut them off the day of the accident, he said, when they refused to come to the hospital. I stopped payment on a check I had sent for their country club fees. I haven't written a dime since. That explains the anger, I realized. They aren't just mad because I set boundaries. They are mad because the tap ran dry. Precisely, Walter said. The realization shifted something inside me. I had always been afraid of my parents, afraid of their judgment, afraid of their power to withhold affection. But you cannot be afraid of a beggar who is wearing a stolen crown. They weren't powerful. They were desperate. The desperation revealed itself 3 days later in the form of a certified letter. It arrived on a Thursday, the mail carrier. A chatty woman named Brenda, who knew everyone's business, handed it to Walter with a raised eyebrow. Certified from the bank, she said. Usually means trouble or a payout. Walter took it inside without a word. He opened it at the counter. I saw his back stiffen. He went very still, like a deer catching a scent on the wind. Grandpa? He turned around. His face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin white line. He tried to access the main accounts, Walter said. His voice was barely a whisper. Who? Mark? He went to the First National branch in town yesterday. He presented a power of attorney document from 2010. 2010? That was 16 years ago. Grandma was still alive. It was a limited power of attorney I signed when I went in for my hip replacement, Walter explained. It was supposed to be for medical billing only, and it expired upon my discharge. But Mark kept the physical copy. He tried to tell the branch manager that I was mentally incapacitated and that he needed to liquidate assets to pay for my care. My jaw dropped. He tried to take your money by saying you were senile? He tried to transfer $50,000 to his personal account, Walter said. Reading the letter, the branch manager, bless him, flagged it immediately because I had been in the bank 3 days prior to deposit a dividend check and was clearly of sound mind. They denied the transaction and notified me. That is attempted grand larceny, I said. That isn't just borrowing. It is entitlement dressed up as administration, Walter said. He thinks it is his money anyway. He thinks he is just taking an advance on his inheritance. We called David Ketter immediately. The attorney came over that afternoon, his face grim. This changes the landscape, David said, sitting at the dining table with his briefcase open. The credit union fraud with Leah's name was bad. This is worse. This is a direct attack on your estate while you are still alive. Walter, what do we do? Ryan asked. He was standing by the window, watching the driveway. He was always watching the driveway now. We restructure, David said. Walter, your current will lists Diane as the primary beneficiary, with Mark as the executor. If something happens to you tomorrow, they get everything, and given what we know about their finances, the house, the savings, the investments, it would all be gone in 2 years. I know, Walter said. He looked tired. We need to create a revocable living trust, David explained. We move all your assets into the trust. You are the trustee. We name a successor trustee who is not Mark or Diane. We can name a corporate fiduciary, or we can name Leah. Not me, I said quickly. If you name me, they will say I manipulated him. They will say I brainwashed him to get the money. They will say that anyway, Walter said. But you are right. It needs to be bulletproof. We will use a corporate trustee. David agreed. A bank. They handle the money. Mark and Diane can't bully a bank. And we change the distribution. Instead of a lump sum inheritance, we can set up conditions, or we can bypass them entirely. Walter looked at Ava, who was sleeping in her swing. I don't want to cut them off completely, Walter said slowly. That feels like spite, but I cannot give them a match when they are standing in a room full of gasoline. We can set up a stipend, David suggested, A monthly allowance, administered by the trust, contingent on certain behaviors, no lump sums. Do it, Walter said, and set up a separate trust for Leah and the baby, education, housing, medical. I want to make sure that no matter what Mark does, he cannot touch their future. I will have the papers ready by Monday, David said. And David, Walter added, send Mark a letter regarding the bank attempt. Tell him if he tries to use that expired power of attorney again, we will press charges for fraud on this count too. He isn't going to like that, David warned. I am done worrying about what Mark likes, Walter said. We thought the letter would make them back off. We were wrong. It made them corner us. Sunday morning. Walter insisted we go to church. It was his tradition. Briar Hollow Community Church. Third pew on the left. Rain or shine. I hadn't been in weeks due to the accident, but I felt strong enough to sit for an hour. Are you sure? Ryan asked as he helped me into the truck. It is public. I am not going to hide, I said. If I hide, they win. The service was uneventful. The pastor spoke about forgiveness, which felt a little too on the nose, but I focused on the stained glass and the warmth of Ryan's hand in mine. Ava slept in her carrier at our feet. It was when the final hymn ended and the congregation began to shuffle toward the coffee hour that the trap sprung. We were making our way toward the exit, moving slowly because of my boot and cane. The vestibule was crowded. People were shaking hands, putting on coats. Then, the crowd parted. Mark and Diane were standing between us and the door. They weren't alone. They were surrounded by the pillars of the community. Mrs. Higgins from the library board, the deacon, the choir director. They were holding court. There she is, Diane cried out. Her voice was bright, cheery, and loud enough to stop conversations 20 feet away. There is our miracle girl. She rushed forward, arms open. Mark followed, wearing his best suit and a benevolent smile. I froze. I couldn't retreat. The crowd was behind me. I couldn't advance without walking into their embrace. Mom, I said, stiffening. Diane ignored my tone. She reached for me, pulling me into a hug that pinned my arms to my sides. She smelled of lilies, the same scent from the hospital flowers. Oh, look at you, she gushed, pulling back but keeping her hands on my shoulders. You look so tired, honey, but you are out. We have been praying so hard. We have been very worried, Mark added. Stepping in close, he clapped a hand on Ryan's shoulder, a gesture that looked friendly but was clearly a grip. Good to see you. Ryan, we need to catch up. The witnesses were watching. They were smiling. To them, this was a heartwarming reunion. The prodigal daughter and the loving grandparents. If I pushed her away, if I yelled, I would look like a monster. Where is that baby? Diane crooned, looking down at the carrier Ryan was holding. Grandma needs a squeeze. She reached for the handle of the carrier. No, I said. It wasn't a scream. It was a flat, hard monosyllable. Diane's hand hovered. Her smile twitched. Leah, don't be silly, she whispered, her voice tightening so only I could hear. Everyone is watching. Don't make a scene. I am not making a scene, I said, keeping my voice level but projecting just enough. I am setting a boundary. You know the rules. Mom. Rules? Mrs. Higgins asked from nearby, looking confused. Everything okay? Diane? Diane laughed, a nervous tinkle. Oh, you know new moms, so protective. Leah is just a little anxious after the crash. I am not anxious, I said. I looked at Mrs. Higgins, then back at my mother. I am careful, and the rule is simple. Scheduled visits only. We didn't schedule this. Mark leaned in, his face inches from mine. His eyes were cold, dead sharks. You are embarrassing us, he hissed. Fix this, now. Let her hold the baby. No, I said. We are your parents, Mark said, his voice rising. We have a right. You have no rights, Ryan said. He stepped forward, breaking Mark's grip on his shoulder. He positioned himself between the carrier and Mark. "You refused her at the hospital. You don't get to play happy family at church." A ripple of shock went through the bystanders. Refused at the hospital? I saw the whispers start. "That is a lie," Mark boomed, trying to regain control. "She is confused. The medication—" "I am not on medication," I said clearly. "I am sober, I am lucid, and I am asking you to step aside so we can leave." Diane's eyes filled with tears. Instant, practiced tears. "Leah, please, we just want a fresh start. Why are you being so cruel? We are ready to forgive you." "Forgive me?" I asked. "For what? For getting hit by a truck? Or for surviving it?" Diane's smile froze. It became a rictus mask of terror. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that the script wasn't working. I wasn't reciting my lines. "We are leaving," Walter said. Appearing at my elbow, he looked at Mark. "Move, Mark." Mark looked at Walter, then at the crowd, which was now staring in open fascination. He realized he couldn't win a physical confrontation without looking like a bully. He stepped aside. "You are making a mistake, Leah. A big one." "It is mine to make," I said. We walked past them. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I could hear Diane sobbing theatrically into Mark's shoulder as the door closed behind us. The victory at the church felt good for about an hour. Then the fallout began. Briar Hollow ran on rumors, and my parents were the chief engineers. By Tuesday, the stories were filtering back to us. I was unstable. I was hormonal. I was suffering from PTSD and lashing out at the people who loved me most. But the worst rumor came from my friend Sarah, the nurse who had been in the ER that night. She texted me on Wednesday. "Leah, I shouldn't tell you this, but you need to know. Diane was at a brunch with my aunt yesterday. She was asking questions about grandparents' rights. She was asking if the state can grant custody to grandparents if the mother is deemed unfit due to mental trauma." I sat on the couch, staring at the phone. The blood drained from my face. "Ryan!" I called out. He ran in from the kitchen. "What? Is it the leg?" "Read this." He read the text. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stared at the screen, his jaw working. "She is building a case," I said, my voice shaking. "That is why they keep saying I am unstable. That is why they talk about my demons. They want to take Ava." "They can't," Ryan said. "We have the documentation. We have the hospital refusal." "They have money," I said, "or they have the appearance of it. And they know judges. They know people." "We have Walter," Ryan said, "and we have the truth." "Is it enough?" I asked. "In this town, where everyone thinks Mark Nelson is a pillar of the community?" Ryan sat down next to me. He took my hand. "Maybe we shouldn't be in this town," he said quietly. I looked at him. "What?" "I got a call yesterday," Ryan said. "From the headhunter I spoke to last year. The firm in Raleigh. The job is open again. Senior project manager. It pays 20% more than I make now. And the cost of living is lower." "Raleigh?" I asked. "North Carolina?" "It is 600 miles away," Ryan said. 600 miles from Mark and Diane, 600 miles from the gossip, 600 miles from the credit union. "Leaving," I whispered. "Starting over," Ryan corrected. I looked out the window at Walter's bird feeder. I love this region. I love the seasons. I love the idea of Ava growing up where I grew up. But the soil here was poisoned. "If we leave, it feels like running," I said. "It feels like letting them chase us out." "Who cares what it feels like to them?" Ryan asked. "Think about what it feels like for us. Peace. Actual peace." I was torn. Part of me wanted to pack the bags that night. Part of me wanted to stay and fight. To force them to acknowledge what they did. Leaving felt like a forfeit. Later that night, after Ryan had gone to bed, I found Walter in the kitchen. He was making tea. The house was dark and quiet, the only light coming from the stove hood. "You are thinking about the move," Walter said. He didn't turn around. Ryan told you? Ryan asks my advice before he asks yours sometimes, Walter said with a chuckle. He wanted to know if I would be okay. Would you? I asked. If we took Ava away? Walter turned. He poured the water into 2 mugs. He brought them to the table and sat down. Leah, he said, I am 78 years old. I know. I went to the doctor last week. The specialist in the city. My heart skipped a beat. You said that was just a checkup. I lied, Walter said. He took a sip of tea. It wasn't a checkup. It was a confirmation. Confirmation of what? My heart, he said. The valves are stiffening, aortic stenosis. It is manageable for a while, but the clock is ticking a little louder than it used to. I reached across the table and grabbed his hand. It felt frail. Grandpa, I am not dying tomorrow, he said firmly, but I am looking at the horizon, and I see the end of it, and that changes how I see things. Is that why you are restructuring the trust? It is why I am doing everything, he said. When you know time is short, you have no tolerance for nonsense, and you have no tolerance for watching the people you love suffer. He squeezed my hand. If you stay here, Leah, you will spend the next 10 years fighting them. They will sue you. They will harass you. They will poison Ava's ear at the grocery store. That is who they are. So I should run? You should live, Walter said. If Raleigh gives you a life, take it. Don't stay here for me. I can visit, or I can sit here and know you are happy. That is enough for me. I can't leave you alone with them, I said. Mark will come for you. Let him come, Walter said, his eyes flashing with that old iron spark. I have David Ketter, and I have nothing left to lose. I am not protecting a reputation anymore. I am cleaning house. He looked at me with an intensity that pinned me to the chair. But before you go, Walter said, you need to finish it. You need to look them in the eye and say your piece, not in a church lobby, not on the phone, face to face. Why? I asked. What is the point? They won't listen. It isn't for them, Walter said. It is for you, so that when you drive away, you aren't looking in the rearview mirror wondering if you said enough. He was right. I knew he was right. I had been ghosting them, dodging them, managing them. I hadn't actually confronted them, not fully. Okay, I said. 1 meeting. Neutral ground, Walter advised. Public, but private enough to talk, and set the rules beforehand. I will, I said. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to Ryan breathe, thinking about North Carolina, thinking about Walter's heart, thinking about the bridge. My parents wanted a meeting? Fine, they would get one, but they were expecting the Leah who cried when they criticized her outfit. They were expecting the Leah who needed their money. They were going to meet the Leah who had survived the ice. I reached for my notebook on the nightstand. I clicked my pen. Meeting agenda. I wrote 1. The refusal. 2. The liability question. 3. The fraud. 4. The future, or lack thereof. I wrote down the questions I had been too scared to ask. I wrote them not as a child begging to be chosen, but as a prosecutor preparing a case. I was ready. Juniper and Stone Cafe was the kind of place my mother usually loved. It had exposed brick walls, reclaimed wood tables, and a menu that listed the origin of every coffee bean. It was performatively rustic, expensive, and public. It was the perfect neutral ground for a peace treaty, or a declaration of war. I arrived 15 minutes early. I needed to claim the territory. I chose a table in the back corner, far enough from the espresso machine to hear clearly, but close enough to the exit that I could leave without navigating a maze of chairs. Ryan and Walter came in 2 minutes later. They didn't sit with me. They took a table near the front window, well within my line of sight but far enough away to give the illusion of privacy. Ryan had wanted to be at the table, his protective instincts flaring hot and bright, but I had said no. This conversation had to be between me and them. I needed to know I could stand on my own 2 feet, even if one of them was still encased in a medical boot. I ordered a black tea and waited. My hands were trembling, so I clasped them around the warm ceramic mug to steady them. I had my notebook in my bag, the agenda I had written out at 3 a.m, but I didn't take it out. I knew what I had to say. At 10 o'clock sharp, the bell above the door chimed. Mark and Diane walked in. They looked like a catalog advertisement for successful suburban grandparents. Mark was wearing a navy blazer and crisp chinos. Diane was in a cashmere wrap and oversized sunglasses, which she removed with a flourish as she scanned the room. They spotted me. Diane's face lit up with a smile that looked painful in its brightness. Mark adjusted his cuffs and squared his shoulders. They approached the table. "Leah," Diane said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper as she leaned in for a hug. "Oh, honey, thank you for meeting us. I told Mark you would come around." I didn't stand up. I didn't hug her back. I gestured to the empty chairs. "Sit down," I said. Diane's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Sliding into the chair opposite me, Mark sat next to her, placing his car keys on the table with a heavy clatter. It was a power move, claiming space. "Good to see you up and about," Mark said, his tone breezy. "How is the leg?" "Healing," I said. "And the baby?" Diane asked, leaning forward. "We were hoping you might bring her. I have a little gift in the car." "Ava is safe," I interrupted. "She is not here, and we are not here to exchange gifts," Mark sighed, leaning back and crossing his arms. He looked at the menu on the table with disdain. "Fine. Let's get on with it then. You wanted a meeting. Here we are. What is the ransom demand?" "Mark," Diane hissed, slapping his arm lightly. "Don't say that." "It is what it is, Diane," Mark said, looking at me with cold eyes. "She has been holding us hostage for weeks, cutting us off, slandering us to the church. Now she wants a sit-down. I assume this is where she asks for money." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and absurd. "I don't want your money," I said quietly. "I know you don't have any." Mark's face turned a blotchy shade of red. "Excuse me?" "I want answers," I said. "And I'm not leaving until I get them. Real answers, not the PR spin you have been giving the neighbors." "We have nothing to hide," Diane said quickly, smoothing her wrap. "Then answer the first question," I said. I locked eyes with my mother. "Why didn't you come?" Diane blinked. "Leah, we have been over this. It was a misunderstanding. We were in shock." "The hospital called you," I said. "They told you I was in surgery. They told you Ava was alone. They asked you to come and sign for her. You said no." "We didn't say no," Mark snapped. "We said we couldn't be responsible at that moment." "Why?" I asked. "Because we aren't her parents," Mark said, his voice rising. "Ryan is the father. It was his job." "Ryan was unreachable," I said. "You were the emergency contact. That is what an emergency contact is for. Dad, when Plan A fails, Plan B steps up. Why did you refuse to step up?" "We didn't know the extent of it," Diane tried again. "The nurse was very vague." "The nurse was specific," I corrected. "I read the transcript. Mom, she told you I had a broken femur and a concussion. She told you Ava was in a car seat in the trauma bay. She asked you to come." "It was a chaotic night," Diane cried, wringing her hands. "I was terrified. Leah, I didn't know what to do." "So you did nothing?" I asked. "You sat in your warm living room while your granddaughter was alone in a hospital?" "I didn't want to overstep," Diane insisted. "You know how touchy Ryan gets. I thought if we showed up and took charge, he would be angry." "That is a lie," I said flatly. "It is the truth." "No," I said, "because of what Dad asked." I turned my gaze to Mark. He was staring out the window, refusing to look at me. His jaw was working, grinding his teeth. "You asked about liability," I said. Mark didn't move. "You asked if coming to the hospital would make you financially responsible for the admission," I said. "Why?" "It is a standard question," Mark grunted. "Not when your daughter is bleeding. I said. It is a business question. Why were you thinking about business, Dad? He didn't answer. Why? I pressed. Why did you tell them the baby wasn't yours to deal with? Because she isn't, Mark exploded. He slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. A few people at nearby tables looked over. Mark lowered his voice, leaning in, his face twisted with a mixture of rage and fear. I couldn't sign those papers. Leah, I couldn't put my name on anything official at that hospital. Why not? Because they run checks, Mark hissed. If I sign as a guarantor, or even as a temporary guardian, they run a financial background check to ensure ability to pay if the insurance bounces. Juniper is aggressive about collections. Everyone knows that. I stared at him. The pieces were clicking together, forming a picture so ugly I wanted to look away. You were afraid they would run a credit check? I asked. I was afraid they would see the flags, Mark admitted. The words seemed to be dragged out of him. I have some leverage situations right now. Complexities. If a hospital system flagged me as high risk or flagged my social security number, it triggers alerts. It could have frozen my other accounts. I felt the blood drain from my face. You didn't come, I whispered, because you didn't want the hospital to know you are broke. I am not broke, Mark spat. I am illiquid. There is a difference. And yes, I was worried that if I signed a financial responsibility form, it would expose the accounts I am moving around, including the one at North Pine. The name of the credit union hung in the air. The one in my name, I said. Mark flinched. I was protecting you too. If they ran my credit and saw that account, they might have linked it to you. It would have caused a mess. So you left my baby alone, I said, to protect a fraudulent account. It wasn't fraudulent, Mark insisted. It was a bridge loan. I was going to pay it off next month. I looked at Diane. She was studying the grain of the wood table, her face pale. Did you know? I asked her. I knew he was worried about money, Diane whispered. He told me not to answer the phone if it was a number we didn't know. When the hospital called, he told me not to go. He said it would trigger a cascade. He said we had to wait for Ryan. You chose his money over my life, I said. No. Diane reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. Leah, no, I chose peace. I just wanted everyone to calm down. I thought you were safe in the hospital. Doctors were there. I didn't think it mattered if we were there right that second. It mattered, I said. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy sorrow. I was scared. Mom, I woke up in pain and I asked for you, and the nurse had to tell me you refused to come. I didn't mean for that to happen, Diane sobbed. She pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed at her eyes. You have to understand. Leah, being a parent is so hard. You make choices in the heat of the moment. I have always loved you. I have always been a good mother. Remember the dance recitals? Remember the birthday parties? I made you that castle cake from scratch. She was doing it again, pivoting, using nostalgia as a shield. I remember the cake, I said. It was pink. Yes, Diane smiled through her tears. See? We have good memories. We are a family. You can't throw that away because of one bad night. It wasn't one bad night, I said. It was the night I needed you most, and the cake doesn't matter. Mom, the recitals don't matter. How can you say that? Diane gasped. Because love isn't about the easy days, I said. My voice was steady, grounded in the truth I had learned in the dark. Love isn't what you feel when things are going well. Love is what you do under pressure, when the car spins, when the money runs out, when the phone rings at 2 a.m. I looked at them both. Under pressure. You folded, I said. You protected yourselves. Mark's face hardened. The shame was vanishing, replaced by his natural state, aggression. He didn't like being cornered. He didn't like being the villain. Fine, Mark said. You want to play the moral high ground? Go ahead. But let's talk about reality. We are the grandparents. We have rights in this state. No, I said. You don't. We do, Mark countered. pointing a finger at me. "If you alienate the child, if you cut us off without cause, we can petition for visitation. I have already spoken to a lawyer." "You spoke to a lawyer?" I asked. "You bet I did," Mark said. "You think you can just erase us? You think you can rewrite history and tell everyone we are monsters? I will sue you for access. Leah, I will drag you into court, and I will make you prove you are fit to decide who sees that baby, and with your history of anxiety, with this sudden estrangement, a judge might find you unstable." The threat hung in the air like poisoned smoke. He was threatening to attack my motherhood to save his ego. "You would sue me?" I asked. "You can't pay your own electric bill, but you would pay a lawyer to sue your daughter?" "I will find the money," Mark vowed. "I always do. I will not let you humiliate me." "It isn't about Ava, is it?" I asked. "You haven't asked about her once since you sat down." "It is about principle," Mark shouted. "It is about control," a voice said from behind them. Mark and Diane spun around in their chairs. Walter stood there. He had approached silently, his cane making no sound on the floorboards. He looked like an old oak tree, weathered, scarred, and immovable. "Hello, Mark," Walter said. "Dad," Diane breathed. "What are you doing here?" "I invited myself," Walter said. He pulled out the fourth chair and sat down at the head of the table. He placed his cane across his lap. "This is a private conversation," Mark snapped. "Between us and Leah. Nothing is private anymore," Walter said. "Not when you threaten legal action against my granddaughter. She is keeping us from our family," Mark said, gesturing to me. "She is protecting her child from a man who commits identity theft," Walter said. The cafe seemed to go silent around us. Mark went very still. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mark lied. "I saw the North Pine letter," Walter said comfortably. "I saw the account number. I saw the delinquency notice, and I know you opened it using Leah's social security number 2 years ago." Mark opened his mouth, but Walter cut him off. "And," Walter continued, his voice dropping to a low rumble, "I received the notification from First National regarding your attempt to access my accounts last week." Diane turned to Mark. "You went to Dad's bank?" Mark ignored her. He was staring at Walter with pure hatred. "You are confused, Walter," Mark said. "That was administrative. I am the executor." "You are the executor of nothing," Walter said. "Not anymore." Walter reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the table. "What is that?" Diane asked, her voice trembling. "A copy of my new estate plan," Walter said, "drafted by David Ketter, signed, witnessed, and notarized yesterday." Mark reached for the envelope, but Walter put his hand over it. "It establishes a trust," Walter said. "A revocable living trust. Everything I own, the house, the savings, the portfolio, is now in that trust. I am the trustee. When I die, the successor trustee takes over." "Who?" Mark demanded. "Leah? You gave it all to her?" "No," Walter said. "The successor trustee is First National Bank, a corporate fiduciary." Mark sat back, looking as if he had been slapped. A corporate trustee meant no loopholes, no emotional manipulation, no borrowing. "Why?" Diane whispered. "Daddy, why?" "Because you can't be trusted," Walter said. He looked at his daughter, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. "I have spent 20 years covering for you, Diane, paying your bills, hiding Mark's messes. I thought I was helping, but I was just buying you time to dig a deeper hole." "We needed help," Diane wept. "You needed limits," Walter said. "And now I am giving them to you." He tapped the envelope. "The trust has provisions," Walter said. "You will receive a monthly stipend, enough for groceries, utilities, and a modest rent. It will not cover country club dues. It will not cover luxury cars. It will not cover legal fees to sue your daughter." Mark looked at the table, his face gray. "And," Walter continued, "there is a clause regarding the North Pine debt. The trust will pay off the fraudulent account Mark opened in Leah's name. I looked at Walter, surprised. Grandpa, you don't have to. I am paying it, Walter said firmly. To clear your name immediately. However, the amount will be deducted from Mark and Diane's stipend, with interest. You can't do that, Mark whispered. I can. Walter said, It is my money. Walter leaned forward. Here is the choice, he said. The only choice you get. He held up 3 fingers. 1. You admit the truth to the family. No more stories about Leah being unstable. You tell your sister, you tell the cousins, you tell the church that you refused to come to the hospital because you were afraid of financial scrutiny. Diane gasped. We can't tell people that. We will be pariahs. 2, Walter went on, ignoring her. You sign a document admitting to the North Pine fraud and agreeing to the repayment plan through the trust. If you refuse, Leah files the police report, and you go to jail. Bank fraud is a felony. Mark, David Ketter has the paperwork ready. Mark looked at me. I nodded slowly. I will file it, I said. 3, Walter said, dropping the last finger. You respect Leah's boundaries. If she says scheduled visits only, it is scheduled visits only. If she says no photos, it is no photos. If you threaten grandparents' rights again, the stipend stops, completely, and I will spend every last dime I have fighting you in court until I die. The silence at the table was total. The espresso machine whirred in the distance, a harsh grinding sound. This is blackmail, Mark hissed. No, Walter said. This is consequences. You have lived your whole life without them. Welcome to the real world. Diane looked at Walter, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. She looked small. She looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting to see if she would still get dessert. But Dad, she whimpered, if we do all that, what do we get? I blinked. I looked at her. What? I asked. What do we get in return? Diane asked, looking from Walter to me. If we admit everything, if we take the stipend, if we follow the rules, do we get to see the baby? Do we get to be a family again? Do you forgive us? She was negotiating. Even now, with the truth laid bare, with her husband facing jail time, she was looking for the trade. If I pay this price, what is my reward? Walter looked at her with a profound, exhausting sadness. He shook his head slowly. You still don't understand, Walter said softly. You think love is a transaction. You think you can buy your way back in. I just want to know if it is worth it, Diane cried. Worth it? I repeated. Mom, knowing your daughter is safe should be worth it. Being honest should be worth it. But what about us? Diane asked. What about our image? I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. The boot on my leg felt heavy, but I felt light. The meeting is over, I said. Leah, wait, Mark said. He sounded desperate now. We can work something out. Maybe a smaller stipend, but no admission to the family? No, I said. Walter gave you the terms. Take them or leave them. I picked up my bag. I looked at my parents. Really looked at them. They weren't monsters. They were hollow. They were people who had spent so long pretending to be substantial that they had forgotten how to be real. I am not negotiating for your affection anymore, I said. I am done buying tickets to a show that never starts. Leah, please, Diane begged. Don't walk away. We love you. I know you do, I said. In your own way, but your love costs too much, and I'm not paying the bill anymore. I turned to Walter. Are you coming? I asked. In a minute, Walter said. He kept his hand on the envelope. I want to make sure they understand the paperwork. I nodded. I walked toward the door. Ryan saw me coming and stood up, tossing cash on his table. He met me halfway, wrapping his arm around my waist to support me. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. I looked back one last time. Mark was reading the legal document, his face ashen. Diane was staring at the empty chair where I had been sitting, looking lost. I felt a sharp pang of grief, a mourning for the parents I wished I had, the grandparents Ava deserved. But beneath the grief was relief. Cool, clean relief. I walked out into the winter air. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. It was cold, but it felt real. The letter from the fraud department arrived on a Tuesday. Sandwiched between a coupon circular and a utility bill, it was thin, unassuming, and devastating. Dear Ms. Nelson Mercer, regarding case number 49,221, we have completed our preliminary investigation into the disputed account at North Pine Logistics Credit Union. Based on the IP address logs and the signature variance analysis, we have determined that the account was opened fraudulently. We are proceeding with a formal inquiry into the identity of the perpetrator. I held the paper in my hand, standing by the kitchen window where the winter sun was trying to melt the icicles on the eaves. I should have felt triumphant. I had been right. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't forgetful. And I wasn't financially irresponsible. I was a victim of identity theft. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. A heavy, oily nausea settled in my stomach. Because the perpetrator wasn't a stranger in a basement halfway across the world. It was my father. He had sat at his desk, typed in my social security number, the number he had memorized the day I was born, and sold my financial future for $4,000 of breathing room. Ryan came up behind me and read the letter over my shoulder. He rested his chin on the top of my head. "It is real," he said softly. "He really did it," I whispered. I kept hoping. Some small part of me kept hoping that it was a mistake, that maybe I signed something I didn't understand years ago. But he stole from me. "He stole from us," Ryan corrected. "From Ava." "What do we do?" "We finish it," Walter said from the doorway. I turned. My grandfather was leaning on his cane, dressed in his Sunday best, a charcoal suit and a crisp white shirt, even though it was a Tuesday. He looked ready for court, or perhaps a funeral. "I called them," Walter said. "They are coming over at noon. No lawyers. No public spectacle. Just us, in this room." "To talk about the fraud?" I asked. "To talk about everything," Walter said. "I have one last thing to say to them, and after today, I am never saying it again." They arrived promptly at noon. The Mercedes looked out of place in Walter's gravel driveway, sleek and aggressive against the backdrop of the melting snow. When they entered the living room, the air changed. Usually, Mark and Diane brought a whirlwind of energy, perfume, loud greetings, the rustle of shopping bags. Today, they were quiet. Mark looked haggard, his face grayish under the unnatural tan. Diane was wearing a simple sweater and slacks, stripped of her usual jewelry. They looked like people who knew the walls were closing in. There were no pleasantries. Walter gestured to the sofa. They sat. I sat in the armchair with my leg propped up. Ryan stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder. Walter took his leather chair, facing us all. "We received the letter," Mark said. His voice was rough. "From the credit union. Leah received one too," Walter said. Mark flinched. He looked at me, then quickly away. "Leah, look, I can explain. It was a liquidity issue. I intended to—" "Stop," Walter said. It wasn't a shout, but the word landed like a gavel. "We are not here to hear excuses, Mark. We know what you did. We know why you did it. You did it because you believe that family is a resource you can mine when you are desperate." Mark clamped his mouth shut. "I asked you here," Walter continued, "because things are going to change, permanently, and I wanted you to hear it from me. Not from a legal courier." He picked up a blue folder from the side table. "I have executed the new estate plan." Walter said. Diane made a small, wounded noise. "Dad, please, you don't have to cut us out. We are your family." "I am not cutting you out," Walter said. "I am cutting you off. There is a difference." He opened the folder. The bulk of my estate, the house, the investments, the life insurance, has been placed into the Hargrove Family Trust. The primary beneficiaries of that trust are Leah Nelson and Ava Mercer. Mark's head snapped up. You gave it all to her? Let me finish, Walter said. The trust is administered by First National Bank. I have appointed an independent fiduciary. Leah cannot touch the principal. She can only access funds for specific purposes: housing, education, medical care. This is to ensure that you, Mark, cannot bully her into giving you the money. Mark flushed deep red. I wouldn't. You would, Walter said. You already have. Walter turned a page. However, he said, I have left a provision for you and Diane. You are eligible to receive a monthly stipend from the trust. It is enough to live on comfortably, but not extravagantly. But there is a condition. What condition? Mark asked, his eyes narrowing. Accountability, Walter said. To receive the stipend, you must complete a series of steps. First, you must settle the fraudulent debt at North Pine immediately. Second, you must attend financial counseling with a therapist approved by the trustee. And third, you must provide the trustee with full transparency of your personal finances every quarter. If you hide debt, if you open secret accounts, the stipend stops. Mark stood up. He was shaking with rage. This is punishment, he shouted. You are treating me like a child. I am 55 years old. I am a businessman. You are a thief, Walter said calm. And yes, it is a consequence. I am done enabling you. Mark, I have spent 20 years writing checks to cover your mistakes because I didn't want Diane to suffer. I thought I was helping, but I wasn't. I was just buying you time to ruin your daughter's credit. I didn't ruin it, Mark yelled. I was fixing it. Sit down, Ryan said. His voice was low and dangerous. Mark looked at Ryan, saw the look in his eyes, and slowly sank back onto the sofa. And Diane? Walter asked. He looked at his daughter. She was staring at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. Do you have anything to say? Diane looked up. Her eyes were red. I just wanted us to be happy. I wanted everything to look nice. Look nice, Walter repeated. That has always been the problem. You care more about the picture than the people in it. That isn't true, Diane cried. I love Leah. I love Ava. Then why did you refuse them? I asked. The question hung in the air. I hadn't planned to ask it again, but it bubbled up, acidic and demanding. Why, Mom? I asked. Mark told us his reason. He was afraid of the credit check. He was afraid of the money. But you? You aren't the money guy. You are the mother. Why did you let him say no? Diane looked at me. She opened her mouth to give the standard answer, the one about being confused, about being scared. But something in my face must have stopped her, or maybe it was the way Walter was looking at her. With that terrible, heavy disappointment, she crumbled. It wasn't the theatrical breakdown she usually performed. Her shoulders slumped, and her face seemed to collapse inward. I thought, she started, her voice barely a whisper. I thought if we said no, you would have to come back. The room went silent. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly. What? I asked. You were so independent, Diane whispered. She was crying now, ugly, quiet tears. You married Ryan. You moved to that little house. You didn't need us. You didn't ask for advice. You didn't let me decorate the nursery. I felt like I was losing you. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. When the hospital called, she said. Mark was talking about liability. But I just thought, if you are in trouble, and Ryan isn't there, and we don't fix it immediately, then you will realize you can't do it alone. You will realize you need us. You will have to come home. You will have to let us take care of the baby. You will have to be my daughter again. I stared at her. The horror of it washed over me like ice water. You wanted me to fail, I said. You wanted me to be hurt and scared so that I would crawl back to you. I wanted to be needed, Diane sobbed. I just wanted to be important to you again. Is that so wrong? Yes, Walter said. His voice was thick with grief. Yes, Diane. It is wrong. It is monstrous. Diane buried her face in her hands. Mark looked away, unable to look at his wife or his father-in-law. I felt a strange sense of detachment. The anger was gone. In its place was a vast, empty canyon. That isn't love, Mom, I said softly. That is a hostage situation. I didn't mean it like that, she wept. I just wanted to hold the baby. I wanted to be the one who saved you. But you didn't save me, I said. You abandoned me to teach me a lesson. And that is why you can't be in my life right now. Leah, no, she begged. Please. Ava is not a tool, I said. My voice was stronger now. She is not a prop for your Christmas card, and she is not a bargaining chip for your marriage. She is a person, and I will never, ever let you use her to make yourself feel important. I took a breath. If you want a relationship with us, I said, it starts with humility. It starts with doing the work Walter laid out. It starts with respect. And honestly, it might not happen. I don't know if I can ever trust you with her. But that is the only path, Mark scoffed. So we have to jump through hoops just to see our grandchild? While this old man gets to play hero? Mark, Walter said. Be quiet. Walter shifted in his chair. He winced slightly, a hand going to his chest for a brief second before he smoothed his tie. There is one more thing, Walter said, and this is the reason why the timeline is strict. He looked at me, then at Diane. I have aortic stenosis, Walter said. My valves are calcifying. The doctors say I have maybe a year, maybe 2, before the heart failure becomes unmanageable. Dad? Diane whispered. Her face went white. I am not telling you this for sympathy, Walter said. I am telling you because I do not have time to waste. I am not going to spend my last good year watching you torture your daughter. I am not going to spend it refereeing your tantrums. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. I want peace, Walter said. I want to sit on my porch and watch the birds. I want to hold my great-granddaughter without worrying that her grandfather is stealing her identity. So, you are going to sign the papers, you are going to do the counseling, or you are going to leave this family. Today. Mark looked at the door. He looked at the trust documents on the table. He looked at me. For a second, I saw the wheels turning. He was calculating. He was looking for the angle. Look, Mark said, his voice taking on a wheedling tone. We can fix this. We don't need trusts and fiduciaries. Walter, you're sick. You need family around you. We can all move in here. We can help you. We can pool our resources. I can manage the estate for you. Save on the bank fees. We can be a unit. United front. He turned to me. Leah, come on. You don't want your grandfather to be alone. Come back to the fold. I will pay off the North Pine thing. I promise. I will write a check today. Just drop the legal stuff. Let's be a family. He was offering money he didn't have. He was offering help he wouldn't give. He was offering the illusion of comfort in exchange for my soul. It would be so easy to say yes, to pretend, to go back to the Sunday dinners and the passive-aggressive comments and the fake smiles. It was familiar. It was comfortable, in a suffocating way. I looked at Ryan. He was watching me, trusting me. I looked at Walter. He was waiting. No, I said. Mark blinked. What? No, I said. I won't do it. I won't sell my peace for your comfort. Dad, I won't sell Ava's safety so you can pretend you are a good man. You are making a mistake, Mark sneered. You are going to need us. I have never needed you less, I said. I stood up. The boot thumped on the floor. We are done here, I said. Sign the papers with Walter. Or don't. That is your choice. But Ryan and I are leaving. Leaving? Diane asked. Leaving the house? Leaving the state, I said. Diane gasped. What? Ryan took a job in Raleigh, I said. We are moving next week. You can't, Diane shrieked. You can't take the baby away. Dad is dying. I encouraged them to go, Walter said calmly. They need fresh air, and I will be visiting them often. This is cruel, Diane sobbed. You are punishing us. We are protecting ourselves, I said. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. I didn't wait for them to leave. Ryan and I walked out of the living room, down the hall to the guest room where Ava was sleeping. We closed the door. We could hear Mark shouting in the distance, but it sounded muffled, like a storm that was finally passing over. The move happened 10 days later. The boxes were packed. The truck was loaded. The house in Briar Hollow, the one we had rented, the one that had never quite felt like ours, was empty. Walter stood by the driver's side of our car. He looked tired, but happy. He handed me a small envelope. Gas money, he said with a wink. Grandpa, you have done enough, I said, hugging him through the open window. I will see you in April, he said. For Ava's christening, if the doctors clear me for travel. They will, I said. Or I will come get you. Did you leave it? Walter asked. Yes, I said. On the kitchen counter at the rental, Mark has the keys to do the final walkthrough for the landlord. Good, Walter said. Go, drive, don't look back. I put the car in gear. I looked at Ryan. He smiled and took my hand. Ready? He asked. Ready. We drove out of Willow Crest, past the frozen river, past the hospital, past the sign that said, Welcome to Briar Hollow. I didn't feel sad. I felt like I was finally exhaling after holding my breath for 33 years. On the counter of the empty house, I had left a letter. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was the final boundary. Mom and Dad, we are moving to North Carolina to build a life that belongs to us. We will not be sharing our address for now. I want to forgive you. I want Ava to know her grandparents. But wanting those things doesn't make them safe. You have broken the trust that holds a family together. Not just with the accident, but with the years of lies that led up to it. We are keeping the door cracked open, but just barely, if you complete the counseling Walter asked for. And if you respect our space for 6 months, we can talk about a video call. If you try to find us, if you sue us, or if you lie about us, the door shuts forever. The choice is yours. It always was. Leah. I watched the town fade in the rearview mirror until it was just a smudge of gray against the white snow. Then I turned forward, toward the highway, toward the south, toward the sun. She is asleep, Ryan said, glancing at the baby monitor on the dashboard. She is safe, I said, and for the first time, I knew it was true. We were free. Thank you so much for reading My Parents Refused My Newborn. During my car accident, what Grandpa told them changed everything. I hope this story resonated with you. It is a journey about finding the strength to walk away from people who hurt us, even when those people are family. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening or reading from today? Let me know in the comments. What did you think of Leah's decision? Was she right to move away, or was the letter too harsh? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with a family member? If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more emotional, realistic dramas about justice, family, and finding peace. Share your thoughts in English below. I read every single one. Until next time, protect your peace.